The wind cut like knives that night. I could feel it slicing through the seams of my coat, gnawing at the skin beneath. Snow swirled so thick I could barely see my horse's ears, and the lantern's light was little more than a trembling glow swallowed by the storm. I had lost the herd 2 days back. 50 head of cattle gone into the white abyss, driven off by the worst blizzard I'd seen since the war. I'd spent years in this land, moving from one ranch job to another, trying to forget the sound of gunfire and men screaming in the mud. But the plains have a way of reminding you just how small you are. Every step my horse took felt heavier, slower. My fingers were stiff around the reins, and my breath came out in clouds that froze to my mustache. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice whispered that I should stop, find shelter, dig a hole, wait it out. But men who stop in storms like that don't wake up again. I thought of the promise I made at Antietam, kneeling beside a dying friend, that I'd never let another soul die alone if I could help it. I'd kept that promise through the war and through a dozen lonely winters. But as I rode blind into that storm, I wondered if maybe it was my turn to keep company with death. Then through the howling white, something moved. Just a flicker at first, a shadow toppling near a broken wagon half buried in snow. I pulled the horse toward it, squinting against the wind. What I saw stopped my heart cold. A woman, face down in the drift, one hand reaching out like she'd been crawling for help that never came. I was off the saddle before I could think. My boots sank deep as I knelt beside her. Her lips were blue, eyes closed, skin pale as the snow itself. I brushed the frost from her face. She couldn't have been much older than 30. A widow's band still clung to her finger. Her pulse was faint, but it was there. "Don't you quit on me now," I muttered, lifting her in my arms. She was light, too light, like the life had already left her. My horse shied against the wind, but I held her close and climbed up, wrapping her in my coat. There was an old trapper's cabin I'd found years back, maybe a mile east of here. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there, a place with a roof and maybe a chance. Each minute stretched forever as we rode. The storm screamed in my ears, drowning everything but the rhythm of the horse's hooves. I could feel her trembling against me, breath shallow and fading. I whispered nonsense, old trail songs, prayers half forgotten, anything to keep her tethered to the world a little longer. When the shape of the cabin finally appeared through the white, I almost thought I was seeing things. It was half buried, the roof sagging, smoke hole clogged with snow. But it stood. I kicked the door in, carried her inside, and set her down near the hearth. The air was still and cold, but at least the wind couldn't reach us there. I tore through the place, found a few logs, a scrap of dry kindling, and struck a match with hands that barely worked. The flame caught, small and desperate. Within minutes, a fragile fire licked at the shadows, filling the cabin with the smell of smoke and wet leather. Her eyes fluttered open then, just a sliver of color in the dim light. Where am I?" she whispered, voice rough as sandpaper. "Safe enough," I said. "Name's Eli Thompson. You're lucky I found you." She blinked slowly, trying to focus. Clara Weston," she murmured. "My wagon. I was heading west to Oregon." Her words broke apart in shivers. I wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "You're not heading anywhere tonight, ma'am. Storm will tear the world apart before morning." She looked at the single candle burning on the table, the wax melting in uneven pools. The light flickered across her face, softening the lines of pain. "My husband and our boy. They're gone," she said quietly. "Fever took them. I thought maybe the West could give you something back." I didn't have an answer for that. I just sat beside her, feeding small pieces of wood into the fire. The sound of it, the crackle, the hiss, was the only thing keeping the silence from crushing us. Hours passed. Outside, the wind never stopped. Inside, I could see the fear in her eyes slowly fade, replaced by exhaustion. She fell asleep leaning against the wall, the candlelight trembling over her face. I stepped outside once to check the storm. The cold hit me like a hammer. The snow was higher now, swirling so thick the cabin was nearly hidden from sight. I gathered what little firewood I had left. It wouldn't be enough. By morning, the fire would die, and so would we. Standing there in the dark, I looked out across the endless white. The sky was black, the wind screaming through the trees. I thought about leaving the cabin, searching for more wood, but I knew what that meant. Men had frozen solid within 100 yards of safety before. Still, I couldn't let her die. Not her. Not tonight. I pulled my scarf tight and whispered into the storm. I made a promise once. Then I turned toward the black line of trees and stepped into the blizzard. Each breath burned. My hands felt like stone. I stumbled, fell, dragged myself up again. The world was nothing but cold and noise and darkness. But behind me, there was a light, that tiny, flickering candle in the window. It was the only thing left that told me I was still alive. When I came back, my hands were numb and my face felt carved from ice. The fire had dwindled to embers, barely alive, and the cabin was thick with shadows. She was still there, wrapped in blankets near the hearth, but her eyes opened when I stumbled in. For a second, I thought she might scream. The look on her face was pure fear, but then she recognized me and exhaled, trembling. "You went out there?" she whispered. "You could have died." "Would have," I said, dropping the bundle of branches I'd managed to find, "if I hadn't kept thinking about you freezing to death in here." I smiled faintly, trying to hide the sting in my hands. "Firewood's wet, but it'll burn once it dries." She just stared for a while, her expression caught between gratitude and disbelief. I took off my gloves and winced as the blood returned to my fingers, stinging like 1,000 needles. I rubbed them over the fire, then looked at her again. She found the courage to sit up, the candlelight outlining her face. There was something fragile about her, like a bird that had flown through a storm and hadn't decided yet if it wanted to live. I poured a bit of melted snow into a tin cup and offered it. She took it carefully, hands shaking, then smiled faintly. "You're kind," she said, voice quiet but clear. "Men out here usually aren't." "I'm not usually kind," I answered. "Just stubborn." For a moment, we both smiled, and in that silence, the world felt less cruel. The storm outside raged like a living thing, beating at the cabin walls, trying to tear through the cracks. But inside, there was warmth, the kind that wasn't just from the fire. After a while, I asked her what brought her so far west. Her gaze drifted to the flames. "My husband and I started for Oregon last spring," she said. "We buried our boy near Kansas City. Fever took him fast." Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away from the fire. I thought maybe the land could make me forget. Then the storm came. The wagon broke an axle. I tried to keep going, but she trailed off, staring into nothing. I didn't press. Some stories didn't need questions. When she finally looked back at me, her eyes were glassy but strong. "Do you have someone?" "A wife." I shook my head. "Had someone. Long time ago. She died waiting for me to come back from the war." The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind that settles between two people who understand pain without needing to explain it. The fire crackled. I took off my hat, ran a hand through my hair, and said quietly, "Out here, the world don't give second chances. You keep moving, or you get buried." Her lip quivered. "I thought about it," she admitted, "letting the snow take me. It would have been easier than waking up to another day of nothing." I felt something twist in my chest. I'd seen men give up before, soldiers lying down in the mud, whispering for their mothers, surrendering to the dark. I couldn't watch it happen again. "Don't say that," I told her, my voice harsher than I meant. "You survived the storm. That means something. You don't throw that away." Tears welled up in her eyes, catching the light like glass beads. "I don't even know why I'm still here." I reached across the fire, my hand hovering just above hers. "Because somebody still has to remember you. Maybe it's me." She stared at my hand for a long moment before placing hers over it. It was cold, fragile, but alive. The room went still. Outside, the storm howled like it was jealous of the small warmth we'd found. We sat like that for what felt like hours. I told her about the ranch jobs I'd taken, about losing the herd just days ago. She listened, her eyes soft, her breathing slow. When she spoke again, her voice was almost a whisper. "You carry a lot of ghosts, Eli." I looked into the fire. "Don't we all?" The wind struck the window like a hammer, and somewhere in the distance, wolves began to howl. It sent a chill down my spine, but I didn't move. She leaned closer, drawn by the sound, her shoulder brushing mine. I could feel the tremor of fear run through her. "They're close," she whispered. "Closer than I like," I said. I stood and checked the rifle leaning by the wall, making sure it was loaded. The firelight glinted off the metal, a reminder that the world outside still wanted us dead. When I turned back, she was watching me, not afraid anymore, but something else. Something softer. "You saved my life," she said. I shook my head. "Not yet. Storm's not done with us." She smiled faintly. "Then stay close, cowboy. I don't think I can stand the silence." I sat back down, closer this time. The candle flickered between us, its light dancing across the cabin walls. I could hear her breathing, slow and steady, the kind of sound that makes a place feel like home. But then, beneath the wind and the creak of the timbers, I heard something else, distant, sharp, echoing through the snow. Gunfire. Once, twice, then again. I froze. My hand went to the rifle. "What is it?" she asked, eyes wide. I turned toward the door, listening. The shots came again, closer this time. "Riders," I said quietly. "3, maybe 4. Her voice trembled. "You think they're coming here?" I met her gaze. The fear in her eyes was back, but so was trust. "I don't know," I said, loading another round into the chamber. "But if they are, we'll be ready." Outside, the howling wind carried the sound of hoofbeats, muffled but steady. Inside, the candle guttered, throwing long, trembling shadows across the walls, like the ghosts of the past had come riding through the snow. The gunfire came again, closer now, 3 sharp cracks that cut through the storm like lightning splitting the night. I moved to the window, brushing frost from the glass with the back of my glove. Through the swirling snow, faint orange glows bobbed up and down. Torches. My stomach dropped. There were men out there, pushing through the blizzard, and they weren't riding for shelter. They were hunting something or someone. I turned to Clara. Her face had gone pale again, eyes wide in the dim candlelight. "You know anyone out here who'd come looking for you?" I asked quietly. She shook her head, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "No, I don't know anyone west of St. Louis." That was enough for me. I grabbed the rifle, checked the chamber, and set a second pistol on the table beside her. "If they come through that door, you shoot. Don't think. Just aim and pull." Her hand trembled as she reached for it. I've never fired a gun before. Then tonight's as good a night as any to learn. The sound of hoofbeats grew louder. I could make out 3 riders now, dark shapes weaving through the snow, one carrying a torch high. The lead horseman dismounted and came forward, heavy boots crunching in the drifts. The knock that followed shook the cabin door. "Eli Thompson," a voice called, rough and unmistakable. "That you in there, boy?" My heart twisted. I knew that voice. "Calder," I whispered to myself. Clara looked at me, confused. "Who is he?" "Someone I used to ride with. Before I found my conscience." Another pounding knock. "Open up, Eli. Ain't no reason to hide from old friends." "Stay down," I told Clara. I moved to the door, but didn't open it. "What do you want, Calder?" A low laugh rolled through the wood. "Same thing every man wants out here. Food, fire, and a bit of comfort to pass the storm." "Try the next cabin," I said flatly. He laughed again, longer this time. "You always did like playing hero. Heard you left a ranch job near Rollins. They said you were keeping to yourself these days. Guess I know why." His tone turned sharp. "We saw the wagon back there, Eli. Saw the tracks leading here. You pick yourself up a new lady traveler." Clara's hand flew to her mouth. I tightened my grip on the rifle. "You turn those horses around, Calder. You and your boys keep riding. This ain't your concern. Everything west of the Mississippi's my concern," he said. Then came the sound of boots crunching closer. "We're coming in to warm our hands, whether you like it or not." The door shuddered as they hit it with their shoulders. Once, twice, the latch split. I raised the rifle and fired. The blast filled the cabin, smoke stinging my eyes. One of them screamed outside, falling into the snow. "Stay down," I yelled, throwing a glance at Clara. She was crouched behind the table, clutching the pistol like it was her only lifeline. The second rider burst through the doorway, firing wildly. Bullets tore through the wall, wood splintering above my head. I dropped low, rolled to the side, and squeezed off another shot. The man staggered backward, collapsing against the door frame before falling into the snow. Then Calder was there, broad-shouldered, eyes wild, half his face wrapped in a scarf. He kicked the door open the rest of the way, holding a revolver in one hand and a grin on his scarred face. "Still shoot straight, Eli," he said, stepping over his dead man. "Didn't think you had it in you anymore." I leveled the rifle. "Don't test me." He tilted his head, torchlight dancing in his eyes. "You always were the moral one. Guess the war didn't burn that out of you like it did the rest of us." "Put down your gun, Calder. There's a woman here." His eyes flicked toward the corner where Clara hid. He chuckled darkly. "So I see. Pretty thing. Must get lonely out here, cowboy." Before he could take another step, I pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. My heart sank. I'd spent my last round. Calder grinned wider. "Looks like your luck's run out, friend." He fired. The bullet grazed my shoulder, spinning me back. I crashed into the table, sending the candle tumbling. The flame caught the edge of a curtain, and fire flared upward in an instant. Smoke filled the room. Clara screamed. Calder turned toward her, raising his revolver. That's when I heard another shot. Louder, closer. Clara stood trembling, both hands wrapped around the pistol I'd given her. The look on her face was half terror, half disbelief. Calder stared at her, eyes wide with surprise, then fell backward into the snow outside. The wind snuffed his torch as his body hit the ground. For a long second, there was nothing but the crackle of fire and the hiss of snow against burning wood. "Clara," I gasped, pressing a hand to my shoulder. Blood soaked through my coat, hot and sticky. She dropped the gun and ran to me. "You're bleeding." "I've had worse," I said, trying to laugh, but the room was filling with smoke fast. "We need to move." We dragged what supplies we could, blankets, the half-empty canteen, the rifle strap, and stumbled out into the storm. The cabin roared behind us, flames licking through the roof, sparks flying into the snow. We collapsed near the treeline, both shaking, watching as the only shelter we had turned to cinders. Clara's hands were red from the heat and the cold. She looked at me with tears cutting down her sooty face. "I killed him," she whispered. I nodded slowly. "You saved us." The firelight from the burning cabin danced across the snow, painting the world in orange and gold. Behind us, the horizon was just beginning to lighten. The storm was breaking, the wind easing into tired sighs. But my shoulder burned, the wound deep. I could feel the strength bleeding out of me. Clara tore a strip of cloth from her skirt and pressed it against the wound, her hand steady now. "You hold on," she said fiercely. "Don't you die on me, Eli." I looked at her through the haze of smoke and snow. "You sound like someone who's decided to live again." She smiled faintly, tears shining in her eyes. "You gave me no choice." We sat there as dawn broke, the fire dying behind us, the world turning pale and quiet once more. The storm was over, but the night had left its mark on both of us. ChatGPT said. The sun rose weak and thin, barely more than a pale disk behind the clouds. The storm had passed, but the cold still bit deep. I don't remember much of that morning, just the sting of snow on my face, the smell of smoke from the cabin ruins, and Clara's voice cutting through the haze, calling my name. When I opened my eyes again, I was inside what was left of the cabin. The walls were blackened and half collapsed, but somehow she'd cleared a space, patched the roof with tarp and blankets. The fire was going again, smaller this time, and the candle still burned beside me, that same one from the night before. I watched the flame tremble and thought how it looked like life itself, fragile, but stubborn enough to keep fighting. Clara sat beside me, tending the wound on my shoulder. Her hands were gentle but firm, wrapping cloth soaked with melted snow and whiskey. "You're lucky," she said softly. Bullet went clean through. I winced. "Doesn't feel lucky." She gave me a small smile. "You're breathing, aren't you?" I tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. Every breath burned. Still, there was something about the way she spoke, calm, certain, that made me believe I'd make it through. For the next few days, I drifted in and out of sleep. Fever dreams took me back to places I try to forget. The battlefield, the screaming, the rain falling on bodies that didn't move. But every time I woke, I saw her there, sitting near the fire, candle glowing by her side. She'd whisper things I could barely hear, words that felt like prayers. One night, I came to with her hand in mine. Her face was lit by the candlelight, soft and tired but strong. "Don't stop," she whispered. "I need this." For a moment, I didn't understand. Then I realized she wasn't talking about me. Not really. She meant the warmth, the connection, the fight to stay alive. She'd lost everything, but she wasn't ready to lose this too. I squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, though my voice was barely more than a breath. The next morning, I woke to find her outside, gathering wood. She looked smaller against the horizon, a lone figure in the white wilderness, but she moved with purpose. The kind of purpose that only comes when you've already faced the end and walked back from it. By the fourth day, I could stand again. The pain was there, sharp and constant, but my strength was returning. Clara helped me pack what supplies we had left: dried meat, coffee, and one canteen of water. The storm had cleared the road, and we could see the faint line of the trail heading east toward Fort Laramie. "You should come with me," I told her. "There's shelter there. Doctors. People." She smiled sadly, adjusting her shawl. "I can't. Oregon's still waiting for me. My husband's brother has a homestead there. It's where I was supposed to go." I didn't argue. Some things you can't change for people. You just have to let them walk their path. Before we left, she reached into her satchel and pulled out a small folded paper. "It's not much," she said, handing it to me, "but it's something I wrote when I thought I wouldn't make it. You keep it." I opened it. The handwriting was delicate, shaky from the cold, but the words were clear. "To the man who found me when the world had forgotten I was still alive. You gave me back the will to keep walking." I folded it carefully and tucked it into my coat. We sat on my horse together. She adjusted the stirrup while I steadied myself. The sky had that clean, endless look it gets after a storm, too big for words. She climbed onto the wagon she'd salvaged from the drift, holding the reins tight. "Clara," I said quietly, "if you ever find what you're looking for out there, light a candle for me." She smiled, that same soft smile I'd seen when she first woke by the fire. "Only if you promise to do the same." I nodded. "Deal." She turned her wagon west and started down the frozen trail. I watched until she was just a blur against the horizon, swallowed by the white. The silence that followed felt heavier than the snow itself. I went back into the cabin, what was left of it, and stood by the table. The candle still burned there, flickering weakly but alive. I reached out and steadied it with my hand. That flame had seen everything: death, fear, mercy, and something close to love. It was the last witness to what we'd survived. I sat for a long time, listening to the wind. The world outside was quiet again, almost peaceful. I thought about all the men who'd died in storms like this. Men who'd fought nature, fought each other, fought themselves, and how somehow I was still here. When the candle finally burned low, I snuffed it out, packed my rifle, and stepped outside. The snow crunched under my boots. The sky was turning gold on the horizon. I climbed onto my horse, turned east, and whispered to no one in particular, "Guess it's time to keep that promise." As I rode away, the first light of morning spilled across the plains, touching the ashes of the cabin and the faint tracks of a wagon rolling west. Somewhere out there, Clara was chasing her new beginning. And for the first time in years, I wasn't running from my past. I was riding toward whatever waited next. Out here on the frontier, we don't always get the endings we want, but sometimes we get the ones we need. If this story touched your heart, give it a like, share it with someone who's weathered their own storm, and subscribe for more Tale from the Frontier. Until next time, ride safe, friends.